just yeah, we started recording, so that's a good sign. And I think we still have a couple of minutes, like a 1 minute. Maybe we should wait till everybody join us. It's exciting. What do you think? Should we start or we wait till 12?
I think, hello, we're so glad to be here. Hi, Kate. Hi, Kate. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I think we're going to, I've seen a couple of people, but I think we'll wait for just till it's 6 p.m. To make sure that everyone's who want it joined. We can also say welcome in the meantime.
12 p.m. in New York.
Yes. How is New York doing? It's super dark here. I try to make it as light as possible for y'all, but I'm afraid this is the best I got.
I think it looks good. It looks pretty good, I think. So,
okay.
Yeah. I think, I mean, still in my time, it's a little, yeah, now officially in my time zone is 12. Yeah. So
let's do it.
Yeah, we can get into that. So hello, dear parents of bilingual children. Welcome. We are so glad to see you here. Our platform is on the verge of being born, and we are all so excited and a little nervous too. So just to make sure we know each other before our platform goes live, and some other another platform that we're going to announce in a few. And we all know what exactly to expect from the platform and from our bilingualism course. We are running this webinar today, and let me introduce myself. My name is Olga Rojas, and I'm the founder of FUTURELINGUAL. And I live in New York with my family. In our daily life, we speak 3 languages, and of course, bilingualism is part of our life. And a little later, I will let you know how all this idea came up. But now let me introduce our CEO and expert in bilingualism, Lera. Lera, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. And welcome everyone. I was thinking maybe if you guys can see the chat on the right, and if you can just send a message where you've joined from, then we can also see what the geographies are here. But I think it's quite exciting because I'm in Leiden, the Netherlands, not very far from Amsterdam, so in Europe. Olga is in New York, so it's we're curious to see where you guys are. And while you're doing that, so my name is Lera Dinnerstein. I was born in Russia and raised bilingual with Russian and English. My husband's Dutch, and he was raised trilingual with Russian, English, Dutch, and German. And so now we are raising a 15-month-old son who's also going to be trilingual. I love bilingualism. I like the subject, and it has really gotten to me since I had my son. So I thought it's a wonderful opportunity. There's not a lot of knowledge out there. There's a lot of myths. We're going to talk about it later. Welcome, Florida, USA. There's more Florida. St. Petersburg, Russia. Hi, St. Petersburg. Because somebody from Sochi, somebody from Spain, another person from Florida. There's a lot of bilingual people in Florida, apparently, Olga. And a person from Leiden, the Netherlands. Nice to see y'all here. Denver, USA.
Nice, good. Lera, so I think we are pretty much ready to get into the topic. What are we going to talk about today?
Cool. I think that's an excellent question. Just to set the scene a little bit for you guys. I don't know if you can just pull out the slides while I'm talking, but we wanted to talk to you basically about several quick subjects. We are going to start with a couple of definitions, just to make sure we know what we're talking about definitions and myths that I've already mentioned on bilingualism. We're going to talk a little bit about the do's and the don'ts. So we've both had, Olga and I, a practice and a lot of experience of talking to bilingual families, and we just wanted to have a couple of bits and pieces on the what to do and what not to do generally. We'll close down with what we've promised you on the 7 pillars of bilingual parenting. And in the last 10 minutes or so, we'll talk about our platform. and our bilingual kid journal.
Sounds great. That's amazing. And what about, we mentioned we're gonna give, there was a gift on the page. So can you please, few words about that, please?
Sure. I do want to keep the suspense a little bit till the end, but there is a gift that we wanted to share with you. We've been working so the platform and everything that we'll kind of cover in the end, something that the team has been working on for the last year or so, and we wanted to give you a little sneak peek of it. So we're going to share a piece of our bilingual kid journal, and that is a way to document your journey of bilingualism with your child. So in the end of today, you'll have a little tangible something to apply the knowledge that we'll hopefully be able to share with you today.
Sounds great. That's awesome. Got it. So can you maybe, what are we starting with? What's the first thing we need to start with?
So to get us kicked off, let's talk a little bit about definitions and myths, right? So we'll talk about definitions, and this is maybe one of the most difficult topics to cover within bilinguals, but you can't sort of not to, because that's to make sure we're speaking the same language, pun intended. Let's have a look at the different types, right? So in the literature and in conversational sort of setting, we have different definitions of bilingualism. And so they're very broad. Let's have a quick look. So bilingualism is, there is a maximal way to do that, to say that. And it's a definition that was introduced a very long time ago, so in the 30s of the 20th century, where we talked about the native-like control of 2 or more languages. And that was considered bilingualism. And there's loads of questions that pop up here, right? So what exactly is native-like? Who is going to be deciding what native-like really means? And what exactly is control? Is that we talk a lot about passive bilingualism, and we'll say a couple of words about it in the end today. So when a child or an adult can understand the language but can't reproduce it, within this definition, that wouldn't be bilingualism, right? So that's a very maximal, very narrow way of it. The minimal way, the other way around, we say any knowledge of another language. Imagine I'll teach Olga a couple of words in Dutch, say how to say gezellig, goedenavond, goedemorgen, and then she's considered bilingual in Dutch. So according to that definition. So that's also a little bit loosey-goosey, if you ask me. And so as very often in life, truth is a little bit in the middle. And we want, so this is my favorite definition that there is, introduced about 7 years ago by in literature. And that's the interconnected, coexisting 2 language forms. So really not a monolingual and monolingual put together, you got a bilingual person. Really 2 put together. Can you relate to that, Olga? Is that something that you recognize in yourself and your children?
Yeah, definitely. Because, also from the point of the definition, how we perceive the definition, a lot of the myths are being born. And they, for some reason, they keep persisting. And how come? Because it's really, why do people believe them? So I think it's very important to set clear the definition, to understand the definition of bilingualism very well. And from there on, you can go smoothly into like myths, maybe, because while you go into the playground or just to walk around, you hear so many myths. And I think it's very important to mention some of them, like maybe we can discuss that.
Sounds good. So the myths of bilingualism, and you asked me, that kind of resonated with me. Where do they come from? When you become a parent, there is all sorts of information that kind of gets thrown at you. And I remember when I was pregnant with Liv, I thought, well, I got loads of time, so I'm going to buy 5 books about sleep. I'm going to buy a couple of books about cognitive development. I like reading. I'll get stuff about bilingualism to refresh my memory. And I think I had a stack of about 12 books. So I've read none of them, right? Liv came and your time became this limited, and you kind of start listening to things that are being said. I'll listen to my parents, I listen to people at the playground, and you get to this information. And this was, for me, staggering. So when Lev was born, and before when I was writing my language plan, so my husband and I came up with a plan how we want to introduce languages. There's just a whole bunch of things that came up. The first, and I think the most prominent one that you hear left, right, and center is the fact that bilingualism causes language delays. It's very confusing for a child. There's 2 or more language forms that interact together. It's incredibly difficult. Think about it on a monolingual level. There are synonyms, right? There are words, there's one object, and there's synonyms to it, right? You can say beautiful, you can say pretty, you can say stunning. And your child will still understand that it's the same concept. It's a little bit similar in bilingualism. It's one object that gets different words. And for example, a child can connect it to a person, right? So in Mama's world, it's going to be schachmatte. And in Papa's world, it's going to be schaken. And in English, it's going to be chess. Things like that. So there is absolutely zero evidence that bilingualism causes language delays, albeit not very common proof at a children's playground. And that's unfortunately the reason we are here today, is to make sure that those myths are tackled and we have the right research-based information. The other one is the mixing languages is wrong and bad way of speaking. Maybe just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, Olga, what is exactly mixing languages? What does that mean?
So basically, mixing the languages is, when a child just take a word from a different language system and kind of brings that into the one that it doesn't belong to, and it's totally normal process and a part of bilingual world. And I think you agree with that, and it's a part of any bilingual family. So what do you think?
Give me an example, because I know you're obviously raising your children with Spanish and Russian or Spanish and English. Can you give me an example in a sentence?
Yeah, like let's say my daughter would say, "Я хочу zanahoria." So she's like saying zanahoria. That the meaning of that in Spanish is a carrot, and for some reason she forgot. It's not that she doesn't remember that word, but the last time she asked her dad she asked her dad. So it's kind of more on the tip of her tongue. So she's going with this word. It's like a good point to reinforce, good point to use that opportunity and to remind her the Russian word for that. What do you think?
Exactly that. And mixing languages, again, is an incredibly normal way of interacting with the two. Remember, we talked about the definition. It's a coexisting of 2 languages. And whatever is more, I like how you said it, on the tip of your tongue, whatever is higher in her memory for that point in time, that was what she's going to use. And she also feels a little bit that you might understand what she means anyway, because you understand the other language pattern. To give you an example, I'm 31, right? So I'm not a child for a while now. And I mix languages like there's no tomorrow. So when I talk to a Russian and English native speaker, the conversations that I have sometimes are incredibly linguistically interesting, but also a bit weird to listen to. And at the same time, I would never language mix with my mom, right? My mom doesn't speak anything but Russian, and I know better as not to do it because she just won't understand. And in a similar way, the older bilinguals become, the easier it becomes for them to sort of sift through and decide, okay, this is a situation that's a formal situation. I'm at school. I'm going to mix less. And this is I'm with my buddies and I know what I'm doing. I'm in my family. I'm going to mix more. But it's not a wrong or broken way to look at bilingualism. That's also an important one. The third one is bilingual children do not reach the monolingual milestones at the same age. And that's also incredibly, incredibly wrong. For the reason of the first one, because bilingualism does not cause delays. See, somebody's thinking of a trilingual chat last time we met up. I think, Olga, they were talking to you. Exactly, right? And it's not necessarily, you guys understood each other, right? I'm sure you weren't there perplexed of, what's going on. And so those milestones, what you do need to consider is that 2 words for the same object count as 2 words, right? So if my child learns how to say apple, how to say apple, and яблоко, I would count as two words, even though it's the same object. If my child learns the same sounds that mean 2 different things in English and Russian or Dutch, I would still count it as 2 words. If my child says moo, which is what a cow says in Russian, that's a representation of a sound that an animal makes, I still count it as a word. If my child, there's such a broad definition of a word count that I do feel sometimes that if parents look at the milestones, they get a little hung up on, well, is my child saying that number of words exactly at that age in that one language? But remember, he's exposed to a whole bunch of them. So that's also where sometimes this milestone comes from. And the last one, and I'm curious what you think about it, Olga, because I hear that from my clients a lot as well, is that bilingual child is just 2 monolingual children put in one. What do you think of that? Is that something you recognize as a myth?
Yeah, definitely. It's very idealized way of thinking of bilingual people. And again, I think it starts all from definition, that people don't have that clear, parents don't have that clear, or people that never deal, and they never had an experience with bilingualism. This is where it all starts. So definitely, this is one of my favorites. I don't know if it's correct to say that, but like favorite myths, because people expect you to be monolingual, but it's impossible. If my father is engineer, then I know a lot of terms about engineering in Russian. But then if my husband loves soccer, then I definitely know a lot of words about soccer in Spanish. And then in bilingualism, the same thing with me. It's very hard to speak Russian actually, or Spanish about bilingualism for me. It's much easier in English, just because I'm learning, and my life about bilingualism is in English. So it's definitely a myth.
Yeah. That's right. And it's also, in an hour from now, we're going to do the same webinar in Russian. And I think both Olga and myself, being the native speakers of Russian, are more nervous about finding the right and exact ways of putting the message forward than we're in English. And that really talks about your different aspects of language. And then you have age, exposure, but also use, right? When do you use the language, and what is exactly that you're utilizing it as a tool? And by the way, Olga, apparently, so the comment was about a trilingual chat was from me, actually, and it's about a trilingual chat that Lev and I had with Olga. Hi, Olga, welcome. In Dutch, Russian, and English. So let's have a look at my favorite picture. So there's one picture I put into the slide, so you can see how wonderful I am with PowerPoint and all this stuff. It's a picture of a sponge. So that's another myth that we often hear. And that myth is true to an extent. Speaking to your child is enough. So very often I have clients that come to me and say, we have a bilingual family. So we have a German mom and a French dad. We live in the Netherlands. So we're just going to speak the language of our family. And that's how our children are going to learn, and they're going to be trilingual. It's true to an extent. So I do not want to discourage families that do that. I think it's a beautiful way. This is exactly the way that this is our approach in our family as well. But there's 2 secret magic words. And those are on the slide. They're exposure and need. Your child is going to work as a sponge till a certain age, as long as he's exposed to a rich, diverse language, right? So if we're talking about a couple of words a day on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday when you're at home, that's not diverse and rich language, and that's not a lot of exposure. And the second one, if you want to be an engineer, you got to go build a house. If you want to speak a language, you got to go and speak it. So you got to have a need for it. Passive exposure is incredibly important. Watching cartoons, reading books, seeing words is incredibly important. But that's only half of language acquisition, right? The second half is actively producing it. And that's really that need part. So you got to have the exposure, you got to have the need. And within those 2 words, there's a couple of points in the life of a child that we call flexion points, where a child's exposure to a language changes. Very often they're when the child goes to daycare or to school, when they start having exposure to the majority language a lot, or when a child moves countries, or when the child is 10 and is just not cool anymore what mom and papa say. So there's a couple of points in there. And those ones decide your exposure and need and how strong it is. And so till the age of 6, they say, so 6, there's a lot of different theories there, but Montessori, for instance, also talks about the fact that till the age of 6, we have this foundational years for your child where you give them the knowledge of the language and you give them that diversity that they need. Speaking to your languages a lot is just not enough.
Definitely. And, I think it's very important to understand what exactly the language acquisition is a process. How does it happen? What are the important factors? And just keep in mind for parents. What do you think?
Yeah, so there's a few different things to consider, and that my favorite one, because I kept telling my husband that and my family that actually our ear gets developed till by about 4th or 5th month in utero. So when a mom is pregnant, which is pretty incredible, right? I mean, there is basically after 4 months, your eardrums and everything there is all done. So you can start speaking to your child. You can start exposing them to your language. They will hear things like humming, right? So they're not going to understand sort of the language itself, but it will sound very much like, talking underwater. And that is the idea, the sort of the premise behind it is that you start with language acquisition and language plan before the child is born. Right? You write down, and obviously you'll recalibrate and you'll change across the time, but you really get started the earlier, the better. Now, the second one, and that's a very interesting one, is that every language has its own rhythm, right? So once your children are 1, so somewhere where they might not be talking yet, but they have a preference for that particular rhythm. I'll give you a fun example. So my son goes to daycare, that's international, but he has a couple of Russian-speaking Jungfrau leaders. And so when he's doing something naughty, and the teacher says his name, he might kind of look and he might not pay as much attention. When the Russian speaker says his name and really says Lev, he hears them both, but he responds to it better. And that's the idea behind the fact that the rhythm is incredibly important. Child-directed speech is another interesting one. I'll be very short about it, but what it basically is when you're talking to your child, you speak slower automatically. You start enunciating better. I don't know about you, Olga, I speak really fast in life, right? If you hear me speak Russian, I speak faster than in English. But when I speak to Lev, I tend to make sure that I enunciate so that, I don't slurp words, I don't swallow endings, and you really think about what you say. Do you recognize that? Do you do that with your daughters as well?
It happens sometimes, but yeah, it's something that we have to keep in mind that the speech, our speech has to be directed and to the child. Some people believe that if you're just gonna turn on TV, if you're gonna turn TV on and let your child watch cartoons in, Chinese, then your child magically will start speaking Chinese. That's one of the things you need to keep in mind. That's not going to happen because the child...
That's probably not true. No, not true. And interesting that the last point, the word recognition is very dependent on input. So basically what that means is that the more words your child hears and the more different combinations he or she hears, they're going to, sort of, there's a little statistical machine in their head to start recognizing where text breaks. Right? So if they hear the word opa, which is grandpa, in 25 different combinations, they will think, okay, opa is a word in which I'll start remembering. And so the more input there is, the better children are going to recognize words. So that's basically, again, the exposure and need. We're going back to that exposure and need. I think it's time, unless there's any questions. I do want to pause, Olga, to make sure that we answer anything that kind of comes through in the chat. If anything is not clear.
We're very good with the rhythm of our webinar. I think we're getting into like the hottest part, and this is a pain points. So the challenges that some of the parents face, and I really hope that, of course, we're gonna cover just a few of them, and there are many more pain points, but I really hope that with this presentation we're gonna give some, a gist of the challenges and to help parents to guide them through these pain points. And I think this is like one of the most important parts of our webinar today. So do you think we can get into the pain points, the hardest part?
Yes, let's do that. So pain points, the difficult conversation. So what do I usually have moms and dads come to me with posing a question? So the first one, and that's a very common one, the more we get the world that we have today, we have globalization, we have more and more monolingual families that are interested in raising bilingual children. So that's one question. So how do you approach bilingual language acquisition, which is new for monolingual people in a monolingual household? So that's a very, very common one. Another one, Olga, we just talked about the fact that the child starts absorbing languages and absorbing sounds in utero. Is it too late to start in toddlerhood? Is it ever too late? And the answer to that is no. It's never too late. There's just different approaches to it, right? There's different strategies that you can take. The earlier, the better. That's the usual advice. But, if your child is 6 or 7, I've seen some fantastic sequential, they call them. So you have simultaneous when you're introduced to 2 different languages at the same time, and sequential bilinguals. I'm a sequential bilingual, for example. I know very, very, very many ones that were introduced to English or to a second language at 6, 7, 8 years old, and they were complete, again, depending how you define bilingualism, but they were completely comfortable with 2 different languages actively. And the third one is what to do when a child goes to school, daycare, and gets overexposed by majority language. And that's what we call the flexion points, remember? And those are tricky. Those are a difficult part of bilingual journey. And those are often a time when you recalibrate your approach. It's important to understand that exposure, when we got need and exposure, that exposure to the minority language is very common. Which one of these 3, Olga, do you hear the sort of most often, or do you have your own one that you have?
I believe, all of them, like 3 of them are very popular, I think. And it's definitely the pain points that all parents need to be prepared, because you try to plan a lot of things ahead, but then, a lot of things can come up, and then you have to be ready with the answers and with the actual plan. From the last conversation in our playground, and I feel like this is the place where all the mamas meet and all the ideas and myths are being discussed. It's like it's a playground. I mean, in a comment, please let me know where you discuss, guys, bilingualism. I think a playground is a powerful tool to get the knowledge, but we have to question everything we hear, because people just share their experience, and everybody's situation is so different, and it's so individual, the approach you have to choose, and like what are you actually going to do, and what it works for one family, it's not necessarily going to work for the other family. So I guess for me, one of the most challenging is this part when a parent at some point, he felt good that he's doing a good job and the child is speaking minority language, and then when the school starts, I think a lot of parents are getting frustrated at that point, because, for example, with the no prior approach is, the person never, a parent never really thought about that. Might happen, right? But then with this one, when there is this transition from home to school, a lot of parents are not just prepared what's gonna happen there. Because, you know, I always recommend to parents, if you want to get prepared, just go one day to school with your child and see how much exposure to the majority language the child is exposed to every day, and how interactive, how active the language is. And over there, you're going to realize how much work needs to be done in your minority language if you want to keep it up and try to develop balanced bilingualism. So I guess for me, that's, I guess, the most that it's some support, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And this, I think we're, if you look at the families that we talk to, it's the families that have very young children. So say there are 6-7 months that are really preparing for the first step, and they're really the children 4 or 5 years old, and that's the time in the Netherlands that they go to school, where they start really being exposed to Dutch, and then that's where the question marks kind of start popping up, which is totally fine, right? Not to discourage you in any way. It is part of the journey. There will be exposures here, there, and everywhere. And our job is to make that exposure more balanced. I like the word that you used, really balanced bilingualism. A couple of months ago, I had a conversation on Instagram with a girl who's in her 30s, and she's a trilingual child raised by her parents. And she was telling me about Chinese, that she was, she's trilingual in Spanish, German, and English. And she's like, well, I was learning Chinese, and it was so difficult. I had to put so much work into it. I did not, and that's what she said. She's like, I didn't have to put any work in being trilingual. And what I answered to her is, yeah, well, because somebody else did, right? Because we as parents put that work into it to make sure that our children are bilingual. It's a wonderful reward. It's a beautiful result that you get. It's a gift that you give your children, but it's definitely work. So let's not sugarcoat it. It's challenging, but it's not impossible.
So I think that's a high time then to start to talk about do's and don'ts, because we as a parents, we need to know where, like, what we can, what we should do and what we shouldn't. And what about if we get into that part?
Sounds good. And while we're talking about that, Olga, I'm going to give the opportunity, because we have you guys all. We're very excited to have you on the line. So if you have any particular questions at this time, please type them up in the question box below, and we'll cover a couple of do's and don'ts in the meantime. And do's and don'ts, again, I think Olga was very right to mention that your situation is different, right? So every family is like a bilingual family is like a snowflake. Everyone is beautiful and different in their own way, and we want to make sure that these do's and don'ts are very generic. They apply to the majority of families, but they might not necessarily sort of work in every single particular situation. But this is where we see a lot of research done. And this is what we think is important to realize before you set out on your journey. And the first one is, I should speak majority language at home to prepare my child for going to daycare or school. And this is absolutely, absolutely not true. We have had, and again, this is in the Netherlands, we have had situations. So I work a lot with the speech therapists at the consultatiebureau, which is the place where you go, like a child clinic in the Netherlands. And I have seen doctors recommending, say, Arabic speaking or even, French, German speaking families to start speaking the majority language at home before they go to daycare or before they go to school. And there's no need for it, right? Especially if you're not very strong with the majority language, you would like to introduce the minority language because that's what you're comfortable with, right? It's the first and foremost point is communication, right? You're setting up a method for you to communicate to your child. And so that's the first and important one to keep in mind, that you absolutely don't have to. Your child is going to, and again, let's not, think about it. Your child has exposure to minority language, a little bit of majority language, and then he goes to school. Boom. right? There's a massive amount. There's all sorts of people talking. They're exposing you incredibly. Of course, it's going to be challenging. Of course, it's going to be a big step, but it's absolutely nothing your child can't do, and it's absolutely nothing that you can't help him cope with without changing your routine at home, without speaking that minority language and supporting it.
You mentioned that.
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I wanted to let you know that it's very interesting you mentioned that, because it's truly, I think a lot of parents can refer to that. And what good point, that you covered.
Right. And this, so, and maybe that kind of to cut the story short, that goes to the second point, that your child will get confused with 2 or 3 languages. We talked about it a little bit in the beginning. The child can mix languages, but they're not going to get confused, right? There's a difference between really confusing things and mixing and sort of grabbing what you're comfortable with. There's a comment from Anastasia. I was gonna. Do you want to read it out loud, Olga, just to make sure?
We can get to the question like in the last 10-15 minutes. So
that sounds right.
And then we're definitely gonna go to Anastasia, like with her question, because it's a very interesting one. But still, what about, because we still have a couple of things to cover, and then what do you think?
That sounds good. Yes, boss. So the last one is, I need to stick to the minority language to create consistency. And that really is a do. So the first one were the 2 don'ts, and the last one is consistency. In Dutch, we say kindjes houden van regelmaat, which means that the children like consistency in whatever you do. Sleeping, walking, playing with things, explaining how things work, potty training. Children like consistency. And if they can learn to associate one language to one person, this is going to work the best. There's a lot of different ways to incorporate it, but really you do need to stick to your minority language to be sure that you create consistency. So let's have a look at some of the comments or some of the say do's and don'ts again that we have here. So we've got the first and foremost, we already covered it a little bit, is the monolingual family. It's not possible to raise a bilingual child with a monolingual family. We cover, and we'll talk about it in the end, we cover it very, very much in detail in our course. Definitely possible. There are different strategies. Definitely something to look into. It's a beautiful, wonderful gift. No approach is another don't. Children like consistency. Right? Having an approach and really writing down what is your goal and what are the steps to get there. That's the important one. And majority language overexposure, right? So if you think about that balance, right? That word that Olga used, balanced bilingualism. How much exposure do I need to give my child the tools, right? It's very, very difficult to ask your child to speak the language if he doesn't have the right words in his arsenal. Right, that's that majority language overexposure can be dangerous. Doesn't have to be, but it can be.
Yeah, I think there's challenges that are, pain points that are challenging, but they are pretty much doable. So, and I think we are here also to help, and it's a good step that we are here on the webinar, discussing all of that. And this is halfway that, people that are learning and getting the knowledge. I think this point we discussed in our 7 pillars of bilingual. So I think we are smoothly coming into this very important part that I think it's going to cover for all bilingual families. And everybody who registered for our webinar, I think you should have received the checklist that our experts created. So I think it's a high time to discuss that, because they are the principles of bilingualism.
That's right. And to be just in the interest of time, to be very clear, I mean, we can talk, Olga and I can talk about this for hours and hours. That's the whole idea of our language course. But we wanted to really name them and make sure that these are the big pillars that our approach revolves around and our thinking really revolves around. And the first one is pretty clear. but it's educate yourself. And whatever format you use, for some people it really works to read copy as books and to do to have as much knowledge as possible, and as much information as possible. We have found, and I have found personally when I had my son, that it's quite difficult to pick up, to get the exact information that you're looking for, because it's a little bit scattered over the internet. There's a couple of books about it. You don't have time for it. Educate yourself and find the right format for that works for you. Is pillar number 1. Pillar number 2 is choose an approach. There's different approaches that we talk about in our course to introduce in different languages. Choose one, talk to your partner about it, and stick to it till there's a flexion point, till there's a change, till you need to adjust. Make a language plan. If possible, when you're still pregnant, when your child is very young, think about it together. It's so much fun. I remember my husband and I, really making our plans and thinking, like, what do we want our child to do in a minority language? How do we want to introduce it? What are the beautiful things about it? It's a very fun conversation to have. Once you got the destination, then you write down how you get there. Our experts also help you with creating a language plan and a template for it. The next one is talk. Talk to each other, talk to your children, have a conversation. When your children are a little bit older, explain to them, why is it so important to be bilingual? Why is it cool? Why is it cool to be bilingual? Social network. That's a really, really big one. It takes a bilingual village to raise a bilingual child. I definitely can't do it alone. I'm the only source of Russian at the moment for my son. And you need to find your network. For Olga, I know it's for her Russian, it's her mom's at the playground. For her Spanish and her daughter's Spanish, it's her husband's family. Whatever it is, find your village. Look for it and find it. It might take you a little bit of creativity. I know it took me some creativity, but it's important to say it's not just mama language. There's a whole bunch of people out there that speak the same languages as I do as well. Continue adapting and recalibrating. Your child's going to go to school. Your child's going to enjoy things and not enjoy things. Your child can be a little bit lazy from time to time and just not want or feel like speaking a minority language. You change and adapt, and that really, really is okay. The last one, and that's an important one for us to recognize, we talked about milestones and that they're quite broad and how to think about them a little bit more dynamically. But recognize when to ask for help when things really don't go right. There is a chance of speech delay that can or cannot be connected to bilingualism. There are things that are tricky. There's points, and this is where, for example, I would also send my clients further and divert them further to a speech therapist to have a look at different other aspects of speech outside of bilingualism. But that happens very, very rarely. But it is a good thing to remember. You recognize when it's time to ask for help. There is another one that we haven't put down there, but I think that's an important one, Olga, to say, is remember to have fun, right? So it's about communicating with your child. It's my favorite person to talk to. He doesn't really talk back quite yet, but I really enjoy talking to him. It has to remain enjoyable for you guys. It has to remain fun. It's not school. It's not all learning. But yeah, just have fun with it, I would say.
Definitely. Thank you, Valeria. It was, I think those are the principles that all parents just need to keep in mind while, raising their children bilingual. And before we get into the questions, I think it's an exciting time when we are ready to introduce our platform and all the results of long hours work and almost a year or more working on a FutureLingual platform, FutureLingual family course, and FutureLingual kid journal. And we are really, really, really excited to share, because you guys are the first ones to know and you're gonna have a chance to have a sneak peek into the platform, and I think it's very exciting.
Yeah. Well, let's go for it. So first of all, why have we created it? Right? We already had it we already covered it a little bit. We thought that there's a lack of a similar platform on the market, right? We thought there's information here and there and everywhere. There's a couple of fantastic experts on Instagram. I know a couple of academic, beautiful experts here in the Netherlands, but we just never saw something that puts the subject in a lens and in a format that works for a busy mom of the 21st century. The persistent myths that we heard at a playground or even within my own family that we felt like they just really needed debunking, right? You need to take research and you need to take academic literature and put it in a gist, put it in a very short format and debunk the information that's wrong and the information that's just not based on anything scientific. We saw a lot of our clients' needs that were not answered, which is difficult to do in just a couple of coaching sessions when just getting the information and getting all the context necessary. And our own personal story, right, Olga? It's do you want to tell yours? Sort of how did you get to this idea?
Yeah, in short, when I first came to the US, to the melting pot of cultures, New York City, I was really impressed with the number of intercultural marriages. And I saw kids speaking several languages, and I had no idea how much work was behind it. And now I'm a busy mom of 2 little girls. And of course, even before the girls were born, I knew I needed to be proactive, and I was surfing the internet and trying to get this knowledge about bilingualism here and there on small pages. And I couldn't find this one complete page that would help families like mine. So I decided that it's time to create one for us, because I knew there are so many bilingual families out there. And every day, the number of bilingual families are rising, just because that's why the name actually, FUTURELINGUAL, because we truly believe that future is a part, bilingualism is a part of a future. So that's how, the whole idea just, started.
Yeah.
And maybe if you cover, so what is there in our platform? Go ahead, please.
So what exactly is it? We've been talking about the word platform for a while. So it's a collection of resources for multilingual families. On one hand, it's going to be an all-in-one video language course. It's not, we thought about it and we decided to make the format video and not just reading for parents of bilingual children. And the course will be in English, in Russian, and in Spanish. It will be accommodated and accompanied with homework and discussions, and very, very interactive, that will help, but also relatively condensed, right? It's just 11 different sessions to talk about the most important subjects to help you further on your journey. So the idea is really to give you the tools, to give the fisherman a rod and let the fisherman go and fish. And last but not the least, so this is really the family, the parent side, but we also will have a large pool of resources for children in minority languages, right? So really the books and resources that help to make language acquisition fun. What I forgot, and I did forget to mention that the all-in-one video language course will be accompanied by either a PDF or an actual physical, which I quite like the idea of, physical journal. It's going to be the FUTURELINGUAL Kid Journal, where you would have the exercises and really a lot of it is really not rocket science, but to come up with the exercises, to come up with the ideas, to think of the milestones. It's just really nice to have it, and Olga has it in an overview here. It's really nice to have it in one form, in one format. You can write, you can draw, you can pluck pictures if you want, be as creative about it as possible, and have that journey documented. It's such a beautiful something to look back at. And this is also part of our gift. Remember, you're going to receive a piece, sort of an extract of the FUTURELINGUAL Kid Journal. I need to say it correctly. Today, right after the webinar.
Yeah.
So
I think also it's very important to mention that the course and the FUTURELINGUAL Kid Journal, they are things that, you know, it not necessarily you have to have them, both of them. Of course, both of them just gonna give you a wider picture, but then at the same time, they are complete. You know, the journal is complete in a way that you just can fill it out. Of course, there are going to be a lot of things that you might be getting curious about, then where we can answer those questions in our course, and then in the course there is a work that needs to be done within the journal. So they're kind of independent, but also complementary things.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I know we're not allowed to look at the questions, but I just wanted to make a comment that somebody says, looks great. I really want one. I keep forgetting funny things my kid says. And this is exactly the idea that we had behind it, right? That you have this, and when your kid is 30, you can look back at it and say, look, this is what we did together. And these are all the things that you said, and you're amazing. And I love how bilingual you turned out. So that's the idea behind it. And so here you have the a little sneak peek on what the website is going to look like. So for parents, you have this division that we just mentioned for parents and for kids. And we hope that it can be useful for the entire family, right? The idea behind it is that you have everything a bilingual family needs on one page.
Yep.
So I do hope that we got you a little bit excited about the subject. But the drum roll, Olga, when is this all going to happen?
The drum roll, we need the music.
We do some special effects here a little bit.
I think it's one of the most exciting announcements for today, the one that, you know, we held back, and we mentioned that it's going to be another very big announcement, is that our Kickstarter campaign is launched today, November 18th, and you are the first people that have a chance to know about it, because we never announced it in nowhere in our social media, like nowhere. You're the first people, and we really appreciate that you are here with us. And for us, it's very important that you found your time to come here, and you are here with us. So we decided that that's going to be a perfect time to announce for the first time. Leda, do you want to go into some details about Kickstarter?
Sure, I do. So the Kickstarter, before sort of any confusion arises, so what is Kickstarter? Kickstarter is a platform to help startups such as ourselves, very often educational startups, really think, subjects that are new and innovative, but they really can use a little bit of a kick, hence the Kickstarter name. And this is exactly what we're going to use for you to be able to pre-order both the course and the FUTURELINGUAL Kid Journal. So as of today, 18th of November, which is today, you're able to do so with an early bird discount. So there's quite a hefty discount that we wanted to give for a week, I believe, that you can really go ahead and reserve a spot and reserve either a printed or a PDF version of your kid journal, and an opportunity to read about our story, an opportunity to support us in the journey as well. It is off today, but the actual launch will be next year. So we're going to make sure that in the couple of months that are leading up to it, right? So we're going to use the time to prepare the website till the end. So it's been really hard worked on, but we want to make sure that it's complete and it's got all the functionality that it needs. And we'll make sure that so that we print out all our hopefully many kids journals that that you're going to use. You can have if you have two children. We forgot to say that, right, Olga? If you have two girls and they're different age, they develop their languages in a different pace. They say funny stuff at a different pace. Then you have two different journals to make sure you document it. So all of these opportunities are there on the Kickstarter website. There will be a link sent to you to be able to pledge, they call it, to be able to support the platform. And so the platform does launch in April, May, and at the same time, the video course and the kid journal also launch.
Yes, that's the exciting news. We were so nervous to tell you about that because we spent months preparing, and over there in our Kickstarter campaign, you will get a chance to actually watch very short but very, I think, that video is just like, it's so heartwarming, that video. It's just I really excited to hear a lot of like a feedback from you guys, to know how you liked it. And we try to do our best to give you the gist of our platform, all the details that are necessary to know, and just to represent like what's going on the whole year of a hard work. So yeah, I guess that's, and I'm very excited that you guys are the first ones to know. That's I think this is the part that makes me nervous and excited. And yeah, it's the first time we're announcing, and first time somebody actually gonna have a look at results of our months of work. And Kickstarter is something that we just wanna, if they say it takes a village to raise a child, then it takes a continent to raise a bilingual kid. So by creating Kickstarter, we are kind of creating this FUTURELINGUAL continent together with you guys, because parents are people that, we are creating all of that for you guys. And I all the time see myself as this person that is in need. And when we were creating all of that, I was thinking from the position of a parent, like what me as a parent, what I would like to see in the course, what I would like, because I'm number one interested in,
to have a good product.
I'm so excited actually to fill this out and to keep it as a memory, and then to keep the, to check the progress. And there are so many exciting things that you're gonna do throughout the course and in the journal, just because you're creating your child profile, you're learning about your family. And once it's written, once you have your goal set up, you can do your small tasks, and it's all complete. You don't need to spend your time and going here and there, and that it's so hard to get language resources. And I think it's when you have everything on one page and you don't need to spend time going here and there. Me as a parent, this is what I want. Like, I want this page to actually work and to be live. I want to use it. Me just being a parent, like apart from being the founder and creator of this platform, me as a parent, I want this platform. I need this platform to be live, and I want to use the knowledge, support, and community that we're gonna build together. So I guess thank you guys. Thank you for being with us. I really hope you guys enjoyed this hour and it was exciting. And I think we still have few minutes to get to have a look at the questions. Lera, what do you think? So here we have a question that I think one of the first. Anastasia was asking, as far as I understood, she does not feel comfortable speaking Russian with her son in front of her husband, if that's correct, right?
Yeah. It's funny. I'm only smiling because I recognize it so much myself. We were just away with my husband from our son for the first time yesterday, and I realized how little Russian I speak outside of my son, right? So I only speak Russian to him, and it's incredibly, it was, especially in the beginning, it was incredibly difficult for me, right? Because I'm so out of my element. I need to find the right words. I need to push myself to do so. And I spoke to you, Olga, remember, and you told me, it's like, okay, it's difficult, but it's a habit, right? They say, and I don't know if you can believe that, if you do something for 21 days in a row, you create a habit. If you keep speaking Russian to him, and you sort of draw on things and you keep thinking in your head, right? And there's different, in the course, we'll talk about different approaches to it. But if you keep thinking about the fact that he is your Russian person, he's your little Russian man to speak to, it'll get easier over time. And I think there's a question, actually, Olga, I think we can link it, because there's a question at the end from Ina, who says that when I'm with my child among people who speak the majority language, Spanish, I speak minority language, Ukrainian with him. It makes the communication slower, and sometimes even I see people a bit confused. My child is comfortable. How do you deal with such situations? Again, has to do with this minority language and keeping to it. And the advice that we give is, as much as you can, and as much as it makes you feel comfortable. Again, there's different approaches towards how to make it a little smoother and a little more kind of going into the majority language to make sure everyone's involved. But you are that minority language source for your child, right? You are that Ukrainian that he so desperately, or she so desperately needs. And so keeping to it and stick, especially you say your child is comfortable, right? That's the most important part. When I'm around my Dutch family, I might also translate things sometimes. I will, for them to be included. But I would want, and that's my language plan, and again, you can recalibrate that for your family, but I would want to say things to my son, at least till he's 6 years old, in Russian predominantly, and then a little bit of English. So I think those are related. There's
a couple of questions related with reading the books. One from Gloria, she was wondering if she needs to translate the books in the minority language to the majority, and from Kate about vice versa, while reading English books in Russian to her 4-year-old. So both of this, it's very hard to give you the simple answer how you have to kind of manage this reading, because a lot of things depends on your goals and your individual situation. But then if you are, for example, like Lera, for example, she is the only source for Russian language for her son Lev, right? And if she's going to read the book and translate it to the majority language, what she's doing, she's increasing the number of exposure to the majority language. And if she's gonna, again, about this balance, when you have this look at your picture as a family and the languages, and to keep this balance, you need to understand how many hours does my child spend in this language. This is what we do in language audit, and we do it throughout the course too. So we actually help and teach parents how to calculate the hours, and that's very important question here. So you have, first of all, you need to ask yourself, how many hours and how strong is your majority language? But the word majority makes us think already that this is a majority. So you don't need to worry about majority language. What you need to worry about minority language exposure. So if I would, I'm you, then if I were you, I think I would just read the books in minority without translating into majority language, just because. But again, a lot of things depends on your situation and what's your goal. But in generally, the answer, I wouldn't read the books in the majority language, as long as you have a lot of exposure. You are the one, of course.
And also, don't forget, right, that again, it depends. But in my situation, in situations that would work for parents that have different languages, I wouldn't translate into Dutch just because my husband reads Dutch books, right? And we like to separate the two and really try to do it's called language association, right? So that Lev would associate me with Russian. So he would have, at some point, children even find it a little bit strange why their parent is using a different language. It can potentially be confusing, and it doesn't hurt if you do it a couple of times, right? As Olga says, there's a lot of things that are dependent on each other. And I like the comment that Kate is making, that knowledge and how to keep a balance and measure it. is exactly what's going to be in the platform, but is also exactly what you need to sort of consider, right? It is that balanced way of introducing languages and how to, if you have enough, then you have enough, and it doesn't hurt to speak Dutch from time to time if that promotes communication in a certain situation. So it's not black and white in that respect. Olga, I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're 3 minutes over the hour. I think we can thank everyone and wrap it up for today. What do you think?
Yes, I think, yes, it's a high time.
Good. Sounds good. Well, thank you, everybody. I love seeing so many faces and so many, well, I don't see faces, but I see little colorful dots. And Olga and I have been very excited about this for a long time. I'm glad you've been able to join us. I hope you can check out our Kickstarter campaign, even if just to have a look at the video. It has some beautiful bilingual children that I think tell the story even better than Olga and I can. And we'll hopefully speak to you soon, and we'll see you soon chatting about bilingualism again.
Definitely. And if you just, at least what you can do to share this video with the bilingual families in your social circle, that also would work. And we're going to be so happy and excited if that's what you can do. And thank you so much, guys, for your time. It was very exciting. I really hope that you enjoyed and you learned a lot about it. And yes, thank you so much for your time. And we will see you on our social media platform. And we just started our journey. So welcome aboard. Welcome to our FUTURELINGUAL continent.
All right. Have a good day, y'all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.